Washington noticed immediately, not because Canada canceled a contract, not because a jet order was frozen, but because Ottawa did something far more dangerous. It asked a question that was never supposed to be asked. After more than 20 years inside the F-35 program, Canadian officials publicly signaled that the deal may no longer serve Canada's national interest. Not symbolically, not rhetorically, but economically, technologically, and strategically. For decades, the F-35 has been sold as more than a fighter jet. It is presented as the backbone of Western air power, the glue of NATO interoperability, and the price of admission into America's most sensitive military networks. But behind closed doors, a different calculation has been taking shape in Ottawa. Canada has paid in, heavily. Yet control, technology, and long-term leverage remain firmly elsewhere. And when that reality was finally stated out loud, the message landed hard in Washington. Canada may no longer accept security that comes bundled with permanent dependence. What makes this moment explosive is not the aircraft itself. It is the implication. If Canada, one of America's closest defense partners, reopens this decision, the entire logic of alliance lock-in is suddenly exposed. And that is why this is no longer a procurement debate. It is a test of sovereignty. Canada entered the F-35 program in the 1,990 seconds as a founding partner, long before the jet ever flew. Hundreds of millions of dollars were committed with a clear expectation: meaningful access to a global supply chain that would span thousands of aircraft over decades. The promise was not ceremonial participation. It was industrial return. Canadian firms were told they would secure long-term contracts for components, maintenance, and upgrades work that would anchor domestic aerospace capability and justify the investment. But 2 decades later, defense analysts point to an uncomfortable imbalance. While Canadian companies do participate, most of the high-value manufacturing, intellectual property, and systems integration remain concentrated inside the United States. What Canada largely receives is subcontracting work, useful but limited. Subcontracting does not build sovereign manufacturing capacity. It does not create independent research pipelines. And it does not grant control over upgrades, software, or future adaptations. In practical terms, the financial burden sits in Ottawa, while the strategic leverage accumulates in Texas and California. This gap between expectation and outcome is what triggered Canada's push to renegotiate terms. The demand is no longer abstract. Ottawa wants measurable, guaranteed economic returns, or it is willing to explore alternatives. That shift matters. Because once a country openly signals it may walk away from the F-35 ecosystem, the issue stops being about jets and becomes about who controls the future of national defense. The alternative did not arrive quietly. It arrived with numbers that immediately reframed the debate. Saab's proposal to Canada was not built around marginal offsets or symbolic industrial participation. It was built around full domestic production, a complete Gripen E manufacturing and sustainment line established on Canadian soil. 10,000 high-tech jobs. Not short-term assembly work, but long-horizon positions spanning research, engineering, avionics integration, manufacturing, and lifetime maintenance. The offer went further, promising deep technology transfer, training pipelines for Canadian engineers, and the creation of a domestic supplier ecosystem capable of supporting every major system on the aircraft. This was not a sales pitch focused on price alone. It was an offer to change Canada's role from customer to producer. Saab's model reflects a strategic philosophy forged during the Cold War, when Sweden deliberately avoided dependence on foreign superpowers. Its aircraft were designed to be maintained by compact crews, operated from austere locations, and upgraded domestically without external permission. That DNA remains embedded in the Gripen E. For Canada, the implications are structural. A domestic production line would mean ownership of knowledge, not just access to parts. It would allow Canadian firms to participate in upgrades, develop subsystems, and potentially export components without navigating a foreign approval maze. That is the difference between participation and sovereignty. And while employment figures and tax revenue matter politically, the deeper value lies in control over sustainment, modernization, and future capability development. Saab understood something critical. Economic arguments alone would not persuade a country responsible for defending one of the world's largest and harshest airspaces. So the offer went further. Canada does not fight wars the way most NATO members do. Its primary mission is not constant expeditionary deployment. It is persistent territorial defense over vast distances, in extreme climates, with limited infrastructure. The Arctic defines that mission. Runways buried under snow, temperatures plunging below -40, bases separated by enormous distances. In such conditions, reliability and sustainment are not secondary concerns, they are decisive. This is where operational differences matter. The Gripen E was designed to operate from snow-covered runways, endure severe cold, and even land on highways if fixed bases are compromised. These are not theoretical features. They are core design requirements rooted in northern defense realities. Cost compounds the issue. Analysts estimate the Gripen's cost per flight hour at roughly $8,000. By contrast, the F-35's cost per flight hour ranges between $35,000 and $47,000, depending on configuration and sustainment assumptions. That gap translates directly into readiness. Lower operating costs mean more pilot training, higher sortie rates, and fewer aircraft grounded due to maintenance budgets. A fleet that can fly more often is a fleet that can actually defend territory. None of this dismisses the F-35's strengths. Its stealth characteristics, sensor fusion, and deep strike capabilities are unmatched in many scenarios. It is optimized for network-centric warfare alongside Allied forces, particularly in high-intensity conflicts. But critics inside Canada ask a pointed question. Does that capability profile align with Canada's core mission? Arctic patrols, sovereignty enforcement, and long-range presence missions demand endurance, flexibility, and sustainability, not just stealth. And once that question is asked, the debate stops being technical. It becomes strategic. Modern fighter jets are no longer machines. They are platforms. Lines of code now matter as much as airframes and engines. Software governs radar behavior, sensor fusion, electronic warfare, weapons integration, and even maintenance diagnostics. Control that software, and you control the aircraft. This is where the F-35 structure becomes controversial. The program operates as a closed ecosystem. Hardware, software updates, mission data files, and sensitive components are all governed through channels controlled by the United States. Every major upgrade passes through approval pipelines overseen by American authorities and prime contractors. For Canada, this means limits. Independent upgrades are restricted. Integration of non-American weapons requires permission. Certain repairs cannot be performed domestically without external authorization. Operationally, the aircraft may be flown by Canadian pilots, but technologically it remains tethered. Supporters argue this structure ensures security and interoperability. Critics counter that it also ensures dependency. Once inside the system, exiting becomes prohibitively difficult, not because of cost alone, but because institutional control is embedded into the platform itself. By contrast, Saab's approach is deliberately different. The Gripen E is built around an open architecture. Its design allows the integration of weapons, sensors, and avionics from multiple suppliers without requiring approval from a single external authority. Brazil's experience offers a practical example. The country has integrated domestically developed systems and weapons into its Gripen fleet without surrendering control over upgrades or mission software. The aircraft evolves alongside national industry rather than above it. For Canada, this distinction is not academic. An open architecture would enable universities, research labs, and private firms to contribute directly to upgrades and capability enhancements over the aircraft's lifespan. That fosters innovation at home and reduces long-term reliance on imported solutions. In strategic terms, technology sovereignty becomes an economic engine, and once a country sees that possibility, returning to a closed system becomes increasingly difficult to justify. Officially, the argument from Washington centers on interoperability. Shared platforms simplify joint operations. Common systems allow seamless data sharing, coordinated targeting, and mutual support within NATO and NORAD frameworks. A different aircraft, the argument goes, introduces friction. But that explanation is incomplete. The F-35 is not merely a fighter jet, it is a binding mechanism. Participation locks allies into a long-term ecosystem where maintenance, software updates, and access to cutting-edge capabilities flow through American-controlled channels. That structure creates durable diplomatic leverage, quiet, continuous, and difficult to escape. From Washington's perspective, this is strategic brilliance. From Ottawa's perspective, it is strategic constraint. If Canada were to step away, the signal would travel far beyond North America. It would suggest that a close ally can reject the ecosystem and still maintain credible defense capability. That precedent matters. Other mid-sized powers are watching. If one breaks the pattern without penalty, the logic of alliance dependency weakens. This is why the pressure is political as much as military. Washington is not merely defending a procurement decision, it is defending a system designed to ensure long-term alignment. And Ottawa's willingness to question that system introduces uncertainty into a model built on predictability. For Canada, the choice is no longer binary. It is not simply F-35 versus Gripen. It is a decision about whether national defense will be shaped primarily by external integration or by domestic capability, diversified partnerships, and strategic autonomy. And once that door is opened, it cannot easily be closed. The fighter jet debate is only the surface. Beneath it, a broader strategy has been forming, one that suggests Canada is no longer willing to anchor its security and economy to a single geopolitical axis. In late October 2025, Ottawa signed a security and defense cooperation agreement with South Korea, marking its first formal defense pact in the Indo-Pacific. This was not a ceremonial gesture. It established legal and institutional pathways for sharing sensitive data, coordinating industrial policy, and most importantly, transferring defense technology. South Korea's rise as a major arms producer has been swift and deliberate. Platforms like the K-2 Black Panther tank and the K-9 Thunder howitzer have gained global traction not because they are cheap imitations, but because they combine advanced capability with disciplined manufacturing and competitive costs. Ottawa sees something valuable in that model. Canada brings shipbuilding expertise, aerospace engineering depth, and vast energy and critical mineral resources. South Korea brings scale, speed, and proven export infrastructure. Together, the partnership points toward a future where Canada does more than supply raw materials, it moves upstream into high-value production. This is not an anti-American pivot. It is a risk management strategy. By diversifying partners, Canada reduces exposure to political pressure, supply chain disruptions, and unilateral constraints. It is the logic of resilience applied to national defense. And at the center of this shift is a philosophy long championed by Prime Minister Mark Carney. Nations that outsource manufacturing eventually outsource leverage. His public arguments consistently return to the same point. Canada cannot remain a country that exports resources and buys back finished goods at a premium. Defense manufacturing is where that philosophy becomes operational. The final question is uncomfortable and unavoidable. Can a single-engine fighter truly patrol one of the world's largest and most demanding airspaces? Can a mid-sized power achieve real strategic independence in an era defined by great power competition? Or is Canada simply trading one form of dependence for another? These are not questions with clean answers. The Gripen offers autonomy, affordability, and industrial control, but it also requires confidence in a different alliance configuration. The F-35 offers unmatched integration, but at the cost of long-term technological constraint. What has changed is not Canada's capability. It is Canada's willingness to decide. For decades, defense procurement followed momentum. Choices were framed as inevitable, alignment was assumed, and alternatives were quietly dismissed. That era appears to be ending. Ottawa is no longer asking which aircraft is most advanced. It is asking which future it wants to own. A future where security is purchased as a service, or one where capability is built, sustained, and evolved at home. The answer will not be revealed in a single announcement, but the direction is clear. Canada is no longer content to be merely protected. It wants to be prepared on its own terms.